Should Ukraine give up land in order to achieve peace with Russia, as the Trump administration has suggested? 0207 862 2222. That's the number. US and Ukraine officials are meeting in Saudi Arabia today with a partial ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia potentially on the table. However, Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said that Ukraine will have to accept the loss of land to Russia as part of a peace deal, arguing it's not possible for them to return to their previous borders. His comments follow reports that Trump is looking for more concessions from Ukraine, including a willingness from President Zelensky to give up territory before the US resumes military aid. Trump has warned that Ukraine may not survive otherwise and has said he'll do whatever it takes for them to accept a deal. Now, the question is, I mean, we've got Trump here, first of all, on Air Force One. Just have a listen to what he has to say.
We want to do anything we can to get Ukraine to be serious about getting something done. You know, I say they don't have the cards. Nobody really has the cards. Russia doesn't have the cards. They don't have. What you have to do is you have to make a deal. And you have to stop the killing.
Jemma, Russia invaded. First of all, they did so in Crimea. We did nothing. Then they invaded the borders of Ukraine. There's an area now they've got the size of Mauritius. It includes Mariupol. It gives them a clear geographic line down to the Crimea that they invaded. They invaded another member of the UN in a dictatorial decree by a dictatorial, vicious dictator. And it looks like the Americans are saying it's time that you allow that to happen. Are they right to do that?
No. And it's so sad that our ally for so many decades, the United States of America, are essentially doing Putin's work for him at this stage. And by appeasing Russia, you betray Ukraine and you endanger Europe as well. And since 1991, those borders have been recognised in Ukraine more than once in international and bilateral agreements. This was a completely illegal invasion. And of course, we all want to avoid boots on the ground. Of course we do. But the idea that Putin is going to be satisfied no matter what Trump decides that he can have, it looks like probably Crimea would probably make the most sort of sense, it's a sort of post-Soviet sort of grey area, if you like. But Putin's made it very clear what his intention is, what his dream is, and it's sort of...
On the other hand, Ukrainian boys and men are dying, as are Russians, and they're hundreds of thousands. I mean, at some point, this has got to end, right? So do the Americans have a point, or are they behaving in a way which is ultimately extremely dangerous for a big bully? And as Jana says, it will leave Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and all of the other bordering countries of Russia quaking in their boots.
Well, we all expected this. This is not surprising. The question is, what is the alternative? So if you want to take back the land that Russia's taken, fine, but you'll have to take it back. Now, what resources does Ukraine have to take it back? Men being put through a meat grinder that are dwindling and resources that are being given by someone else. And if someone else is giving you the guns to fight, unfortunately, they have a stake in how you fight. Peace is obviously the goal here, but peace in the short term and peace in the long term are two very different things. Peace in the short term is obviously a ceasefire, which both parties want, considering Russia is using North Korean soldiers at this point. So they're not exactly in the best position. But peace in the long term is a permanent deterrent. We've been hearing a lot about the short term from Trump. Give up land, do all of this. That's fine. But what are the long-term security guarantees that the US and Europe are willing to give Ukraine?
There's no guarantees.
And until we hear that, it's understandable to be very queasy about this, because it does look like,
one of the things that Marco Rubio has been clear
behavior.
about, which some people argue is what sparked the war in significant degree in the first place, is that it is an absolute no for Ukraine joining NATO. But you ask, how is that going to preserve peace? Just to give people a sense of what we're talking about. So the port city of Mariupol, which is under Russian occupation, it holds significance because it gives Russia the chance to strangle the entire Ukraine economy, if it wants, because it has the land corridor between the Crimea and the Donbass. Now, in economic terms, what that means is if that's a peace deal where Russia effectively runs and controls that area of land, a peace at what price? They could simply switch off the economic taps for Ukraine in the event.
And Trump's aiding and abetting him, literally. What did he do with the US intelligence? He sort of cut that off. So actually Kyiv had drones all over it last night as a result. It's absolutely tragic, if you ask me. And there aren't going to be any guarantors. And so, you know, this expansionist attitude that Putin has, I feel like, where does this end?
Well, despite there not being intelligence sharing, which there's been no promises yet for that to be restored by the Americans to the Ukrainians, Russian officials have said that the Ukraine unleashed a massive drone attack on Moscow overnight, and a number of residential buildings were damaged and at least 2 people have been killed. It was the largest Ukrainian drone attack on the capital during the war, with the Russian military claiming they shot down over 300 drones in various regions. So, you know, there's been an escalation in response to all of this.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting as well is that the only time that is it Article 5 was invoked through NATO was after 9/11, when hundreds of countries went to assist America, ourselves included, and we've never asked for money back. You know, we've never said we want some of your oil.
Yeah, I mean, I
quo.
appreciate all the outrage, because it is outrageous that a country that's aggressive gets to keep the land that they've stolen. That's perfectly reasonable. My question, and what everyone should be more outraged about, was what was Europe's plan? When Germany and the major European economies were happy to get drunk on Russian gas, knowing that this was a nefarious global actor, what was their security guarantee?
Oh, they continue to pay Russia now for their gas, by the way.
They pay more to Russia now than they spend on Ukraine's defense. What was the plan of the European leaders that are saying, oh, naughty Trump for not wanting the US to spend money on the Ukraine war indefinitely? I don't agree with Trump's tactics. I think it's crass and bullish. However, European leaders have failed in their basic duty to protect European citizens, and they should be looking to themselves first.
Correct, in terms of the gas and being so reliant, etc. But really, could you have forecast that the bloke off The Apprentice was going to be in the White House, and that they were very complacent about having the US as an ally, and suddenly they're an adversary?
Let's go
so the whole world order has
changed. Let's go to Dave in Cheshire. You heard what happened last night. Lots of people are extremely worried about this. Should we be, or is it time for Ukraine, frankly, and Vladimir Zelensky to listen to Trump, however difficult and capricious and childish he is, and say, yeah, I'm prepared to give up the land, and what's more, I'm going to hold elections and stand down, which is what Trump wants?
Good morning, Mr. Rinder.
Good morning, Dave.
Well, the thing is, sir, I feel really strongly about this. It's something I covered a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And the reason I feel so strongly is I just put hypothetically further down the line,
right,
and look, say China's the big superpower along with America.
Right.
You look 10 years down the line and Trump's still running the country, which he wouldn't be.
No.
And China decide to invade America and take a piece of America like Florida or whatever it may be.
Right.
Do you believe Trump, to end a war, would let them do that? Because I don't.
Well, I hear your
point.
That's the point. Is that
why should he ask Zelensky to do
ultimately the aggressor plays? You know, I think back to sort of Margaret Thatcher and the Falklands War. She said dictators have to be beaten. You don't compromise with them. It's their strength, or our strength, that brought Russia to the table, which closed and resolved the Cold War.
But then you could argue this is Obama's fault, because if Obama had nipped this in the bud back in 2014,
he certainly could have done it.
In the situation
that was I agree with you. That was the appeasement then.
Exactly.
Right, now let's go to Shelley. Shelley, you're in Newcastle upon Tyne.
Hi. I think basically you keep going about people dying, but if they give up the land, that means all those Ukrainians have died for nothing, really. I mean, what is Russia giving up? There's 20,000 over Ukrainian children being took by Russia. Are they going to get them back? Nobody's mentioning all these. What about the men that's being taken in war as well? What is actually Russia going to give up? It's a disgrace. And I'm disgusted in Donald Trump, absolutely disgusted the way he's gone on.
I think a lot of people are echoing what you have to say, not least because of the big question that you ask, which is, what have those people died for in the first place if the land is simply going to be given up? Thanks for calling, Shelley. Neil, you're in Essex. Do you agree with that? Or is it time to do a deal to stop more young people being killed?
Hello, good morning. I actually don't think the Ukrainians have the resources or the people to remove Russia from its territory.
Yep.
So I'm afraid they They're not going to be able to do that. Russia is calling on its deepest, darkest resources. It's employing people on $30,000 a year to fight there from
Well, that's not entirely true. I mean, they conscripted a bunch of North Koreans. These are not exactly prisoners. These are not exactly the best army in the world, to say the least. In many respects, it's been more like Dad's army. But, Neil, where you're right and where you make a very important point is the thing about Russia, as every country historically has found out, is that they've got a wealth, a limitless bottom of resources, and certainly in terms of manpower, and certainly more than the Ukraine. And so you do make a very important point. Ultimately, if Ukraine can't win, then as Trump is saying, and this is a point he makes, it's time to do a deal. Mary, you're in Inverness. Do you agree with that?
I'm actually in Edinburgh now. I campaigned for Trump because I wanted the American border secured, but I'm very disappointed that he. Wow,
so you have buyer's. Sorry to interrupt. You've buyer's remorse. You voted for Trump, but now you're not so sure.
Basically, I was just heartbroken when he. They had that 10-minute confrontation with Zelensky. I was just heartbroken. And as far as Russia, you have to stand up to a bully. You can't. There's no other way. And they shouldn't have to give any land. And the killing has to stop. And like I think a previous viewer said, if they give up land, then what have those Ukrainian soldiers just died for?
Well, I think I hear you. And also, no doubt, people in Taiwan will be extremely worried if that happens. Yeah. And not to mention other parts of the world, Georgia, and as I say, all
Moldova.
Right. Estonia, etc. It's a frightening thing. Mary, it's very interesting. I wonder whether other Trump voters like you are feeling the same. Lynn, you're in Worcestershire. I mean, so many people calling, saying, absolutely no, no, no. We stand up to bullies and we don't want Ukrainian men to have died for no reason.
Absolutely. I absolutely abhor bullying, and the fiasco in the Oval Office 2 weeks ago was just horrific and clearly contrived. I believe the whole thing was contrived to bully Zelensky, and it was all done as a show for Putin, who would have been watching and rubbing his hands together, and then subsequently removing the aid and the intelligence has allowed Putin to...
Lynn, listen, I have to put the other side of the argument. Some people may very well say that that might have been choreographed, exactly as you suggest, because it's the only way that Putin is going to come to the table and do, as Donald Trump would say, some sort of deal. And without a deal, young people on both sides are going to continue to die. And just to be clear to the previous voter who voted for Donald Trump, he did make it clear when he came into office he was going to end the war. This is a way he thinks he's going to do it. Esther?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is Trump's real politique. And the question is, what now? Because I don't like how Trump-focused this conversation has been, even though I'm sure he would like that, because there are other options. There are other options than relying on Trump's America, like Europe, for example, which is on Ukraine, and, well, which is on Russia's border. I mean, you have the Estonian Prime Minister saying you might need to bring in conscription for most major European countries.
Not just there, but Poland doing the same. The world, all I can say, is very different now than it was about 3 months ago. And many people out there feel that it's more troubling and more dangerous. What most people want, regardless of the outcome, is peace and, frankly, less dead young men. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for all the callers. Later.